I believe that if there are more and more arrest warrants issued in Poland, I think that we will see more Polish politicians fleeing into Budapest.
Witam Państwa w kolejnym odcinku naszego programu Świat według Polski, w którym staramy się pokazać najważniejsze wydarzenia na świecie z polskiej perspektywy i dlaczego one dla Polaków są ważne. Dzisiaj Państwa i moim specjalnym gościem jest Szabolcs Panyi. I hope it's good pronunciation. Węgierski dziennikarz śledczy z serwisu Visquer. Szabolcs, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Where now is the Viktor Orban? Between Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and maybe in completely different places?
Well, Viktor Orban has been acting as a Trojan horse for Putin and also for China for a long time within the European Union. And we've seen since January, when Donald Trump took office, that Hungary has also become a Trojan horse for the new US administration. There was this famous UN resolution that was basically only supported by Hungary, the United States, who was actually proposing it, Sudan, North Korea, Russia. So when the European Union had its counter proposal, which was acknowledging the fight of Ukraine and condemning Russia, Hungary chose to side with this new Trump-Putin axis. I think that was a very important official statement where Hungary is right now. The thing is that Viktor Orban has for many years portrayed himself as a true warrior for European values, while he was bashing the American imperialist, globalist, whatever influence in Europe. He portrayed Poland and the Baltic countries as vassals of the US. And suddenly the tables have turned, and it's Hungary that is acting not just as a vassal of Russia anymore, but also of the United States. More recently, Hungary was also opposing the EU accession of Ukraine. Even Robert Fico and the Slovak government caved in the end of the day and did not veto. It was only Orban who went against the EU. So the thing is that for many years, Orban did not dare to go against everyone else in the EU, meaning that in the end of the day, he always voted for the sanctions and prolonging the sanctions. This is the first time where Orban feels that he's emboldened by the United States, so he does dare to use his veto power from now on.
So in any place you see that the Viktor Orban influence on Donald Trump, or maybe Donald Trump more influence on Viktor Orban? What is your perspective and perspective people living in Hungary?
It's hard to tell what is Viktor Orban's real relationship with Donald Trump. Of course, it is Viktor Orban's interest to portray himself as someone who's very close to Trump, someone who has a special relationship with him. And it is true that before the US elections and even after the US elections, Orban did visit Trump in Mar-a-Lago. And there were not many European leaders who were invited. Also, it is true that Orban has been investing a lot of Hungarian public money into building up this influence network, these institutions and foundations that are infiltrating the Republican Party, especially the Heritage Foundation and other very influential think tanks that shape the agenda of the Trump administration. Orban has for many years invested a lot of energy and money into that, and of course that does pay off. There are reports saying that Trump's hostility towards Ukraine is partly stemming from Viktor Orban's influence. There was a recent report saying that Viktor Orban was someone to whom Trump was listening to when he was talking about Ukraine. So probably he does have certain influence over Trump's worldview. But in the end of the day, when it comes to US-European relations, it's not Orban who's an intermediary. It's Giorgia Meloni, it's Mark Rutte, the new NATO Secretary General, former Dutch Prime Minister, Emmanuel Macron, or very likely Friedrich Merz, the next German Chancellor, just because Hungary is a small country, so its real power is really limited. But when it comes to ideology and when it comes to shaping the rhetorics, probably he does have some influence.
I think also it's a very important point that from last years we observe, for example, as I know, big conservative conference in Budapest, organizing by the basically people very close to the Trump. Also, I want to ask you about the, let's say, some kind of bromance between the Viktor Orban and Vladimir Putin. They are close. Putin are contacting with Orban very often, or maybe we think the Orban is very close to the Putin. And also the same question that these politicians influence to each other, or maybe we have very bad view about all of this situation.
I mean, Vladimir Putin does not really have a symmetric relationship with Viktor Orban. Usually he has very asymmetric relationships with all the other pro-Kremlin leaders around the world. Or Viktor Orban is not different from that. I don't think that they are close. I don't really think, for example, that Vladimir Putin or anyone in Russia trusts Viktor Orban. It's a different type of relationship. It's an uneven relationship where Viktor Orban has essentially refrained from criticizing Putin for many, many years. While he's lashing out at Ukraine and Zelensky, he never says anything bad about Vladimir Putin. Which also shows you that this is a very special relationship. We're still, I mean, I'm an investigative journalist, and a lot of my colleagues and myself, we put a lot of efforts into trying to uncover why is this relationship so special. To us, it seems that it's not the Hungarian interests, it's not the Hungarian national interest, and it's not the Hungarian economy's interest that drive this relationship. Unlike every other European country and Central European country, Hungary has not made efforts into diversifying its reliance on Russian natural gas or Russian oil. Actually, the Hungarian government negotiated an exemption from the EU's oil embargo. And currently, the Hungarian budget is benefiting from Russian oil sales, because Russian oil is quite cheap and the Hungarian oil company is trading with that, and Orban imposed an extra tax on the Hungarian oil company. So the profit that's being made on trading with Russian oil, it's directly flowing in to the Hungarian budget. So it's an important source of income for Orban, especially in days when the Hungarian budget is in a really, really bad shape.
So let's say it's in very simple way that if Hungarian government support Russia or say something positive about the Putin, it means that the Hungarian in general thinks the same, or how? What is the main opinion Hungarian society about the Russian Putin?
It's like in many other countries. Our society politically is extremely polarized. So it means that on one end of the spectrum, you have a lot of pro-Russian and also pro-Orban views. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have those who oppose Orban. They are also usually opposing Russia. And you have very little people in the middle. So that's why all these polls about attitudes towards Russia or trust in Putin and other world leaders bring very weird results, because you have a lot of people supporting opposite ideas. So that's why I would say there's like no average Hungarian opinion. There are the pro-Orban and the anti-Orban Hungarians, and they have very differing views on Russia, the Putin, and the war in Ukraine.
If we talk about the current international affair situation, what is the position of the Hungarian government if we talk about the peace negotiation, about Ukraine, direct US-Russia talks, like government in Budapest keep the same position like in the previous years, or maybe you see and your colleagues the change of this Hungarian or Orban position if we talk about the US, Ukraine, Russia, and so on?
So Viktor Orban has for a very long time said that the war in Ukraine is a proxy war between the US and Russia, and any kind of settlement, ceasefire, or peace agreement should be negotiated between Russia and the US, which is what is happening these days, and the Ukrainians are just scrambling to get back to the negotiating table, just like the Europeans. But Orban's view has been pretty solid on that. It really aligns with the Russian viewpoint and the Russian talking points that this is a proxy war, that the war was provoked by the NATO's expansion towards Russia, essentially blaming Ukraine and blaming the US for the war. So in that regard, the position has not changed. What did change is the rhetorics of Viktor Orban, and also the rhetorics of people around him. They made recently, this past week, remarks where they essentially questioned Ukraine as a state or a country. There was an expression saying that a territory named Ukraine, basically, even in rhetoric, stripping Ukraine of its statehood. So they are clearly escalating their rhetorics. And 3 years ago, for example, Hungary, after much debate, but eventually supported to start EU accession talks with Ukraine. But now the position has changed and Hungary is directly opposing that. And that's just because they feel emboldened by the Trump administration. They feel that they would not be pressured by Trump because they feel that they are on the same page.
But you think that the government in Budapest trying to take some own profits from this new direct talks between US, Russia, starting the peace negotiation about Ukraine? Do you see that the Orban trying to play some important role here, or maybe just commenting because Hungary is a small country and don't have any tools to influence on that?
Orban is trying to create an image that he's playing a role or that he could play a role. But in reality, as you said, Hungary is just too small for that. You may remember last year before Poland's EU presidency started, it was a Hungarian presidency. And Orban started that Hungarian presidency back last June or July, by traveling to Kyiv, to Moscow, to Beijing, and to Mar-a-Lago. And his visits and trips to mostly to Putin and Trump were not coordinated with the EU. He tried to use Hungary's EU presidency to create this illusion that somehow he's becoming an EU leader, somehow he's playing an important role in peace negotiations. But in reality, Hungary has no elaborate peace plan. Hungary has no elaborate plan for ceasefire. So they're talking about peace all the time, like in the old Soviet times. But they have no practical ideas or agenda how that peace should be achieved. And right now that these peace negotiations or ceasefire negotiations eventually started, you can see that the location and the mediators in these talks are in the Middle East, not in Hungary. But I think no one who understands how international politics works really believed that Hungary could play an important role here. There were ideas floated that maybe Trump and Putin could meet in Budapest or Bratislava. It's just really impossible. If there's such a meeting, it would happen somewhere out of NATO territory, in Vienna, Ankara, somewhere in the Middle East. And also the lower level negotiations would take place outside of NATO territory, maybe apart from Turkey, but clearly Hungary is just not that important.
How cold, in your opinion, is Polish-Hungarian relation in this moment? Maybe it's not very cold, maybe it does not freeze, right? But from Warsaw perspective, it's like Tusk and Orban government don't feel love so much as we see.
I mean, when we talk about Polish-Hungarian relations, and I guess you mean the relationship between the two governments, that's quite cold. It's not how it started. So even though Viktor Orban has not made a secret about the fact that Law and Justice is his Polish ally, and Viktor Orban's spin doctors and campaign strategists reportedly helped out the PIS campaign. Well, they did not contribute much to their victory since they lost, but they did have an involvement. But even I think a year ago or around a year ago, the rhetoric just was completely different. So there was at least some civilized conversation between the two governments. But recently, Péter Szijjártó, our foreign minister, has been making remarks very hostile towards Radek Sikorski and also towards Poland. Also, Orban's propaganda is smearing the Tusk government, and we see signs how the current Orban government is trying to undermine the Polish government and its legitimacy. On the other hand, for example, we will have Andrzej Duda visiting Hungary pretty soon. So on a different level, of course, there are still visits and meetings, but politically it's quite unimportant, I would say.
But Polish conservative parties, especially Law and Justice, say about Hungary only in positive way. So what we know about the current nowadays relationship between Law and Justice politicians, maybe other right parties in Poland and Hungary and Hungarian politics, Fidesz especially, is it they are close, they are cooperate, or maybe they are divided? Jarosław Kaczyński many times, say in very positive way about the Viktor Orban, about the Hungary, but in last weeks, I don't remember any special remarks about the Hungary by Kaczyński.
I think this relationship is quite complicated. So there are still people, as far as I hear, in the Law and Justice Party who hold grudges because, as I said, Orban's campaign strategists who worked on the Law and Justice campaign were not really contributing to the success. So some people blame the election loss actually on Viktor Orban's strategist and this negative campaigning. On the other hand, as far as I understand, also the Law and Justice Party is not publicly, but internally, it does have divisions. And we don't know, publicly, we know very little with which faction does Viktor Orban have a very close relationship. Of course, with Kaczynski, he's been having a close connection for some time. But on the other hand, just remember when the massacre in Bucha happened, and Viktor Orban was very reluctant on condemning it, then it was Kaczynski who said that, well, if Viktor Orban doesn't see what has happened in Bucha, then he should go to an optometrist. He should see a doctor. So there were occasions when Kaczynski was criticizing Orban, and also Orban's pro-Kremlin policies, which are getting even more and more obvious, are something that are to some extent liability for Law and Justice. They cannot really be as vocally supportive of Orban because of Orban's Russia policies, because they know that this would alienate a certain part of Polish society. And of course, there are these controversies, mostly about Marcin Romanowski seeking asylum in Hungary, which really contributed to the deterioration of the relationships. Or I can say that how, for example, Viktor Orban and his people have been questioning the rule of law in Poland and basically accusing the Tusk government of like a coup or like dictatorial turn in Poland, where all these innocent Law and Justice politicians are persecuted for political beliefs. So this did not help much.
If we talk about the Marcin Romanowski case, who play who? Like Marcin Romanowski play with Fidesz and Orban and use for the personal reason, or maybe Orban government use Marcin Romanowski to play with this cold relationship between his government and Donald Tusk government?
It seems like a mutually beneficial deal, the Romanowski asylum deal, because this helps Orban to strengthen his influence over Law and Justice and other right-wing factions in Poland. So despite his proximity to Putin, through offering asylum or offering political protection to Polish politicians, he can still play some important role there. On the other side, I think that for those politicians who are facing justice because they embezzled funds or because they abused power, obviously it's good for them that they don't have to go to Minsk or Moscow or Belgrade, but they can seek shelter within the Schengen zone in an EU country. Budapest is a very nice, comfortable place to live in. Even before Romanowski, we saw that during the European parliamentary election campaign, Daniel Obajtek was hiding here in Budapest. So I believe that if there are more and more arrest warrants issued in Poland, I think that we will see more Polish politicians fleeing into Budapest. The problem is that at the same time, Viktor Orban's party is not doing very well in the polls. Just today, a new reliable poll came out, which shows that the opposition TISA party, which is allied with the European People's Party, allied with Donald Tusk's civic platform, is leading in 9 points Viktor Orban's ruling party. We will have elections next spring, so in about a little more than a year. And if Viktor Orban loses election, then all those politicians, not just from Poland, but we have Nikola Gruevski from North Macedonia also here in Budapest, they would likely have to seek another place to request asylum.
But do you think that the other law and justice politicians involving in many crime cases could find the same shelter, the same refugee status as Marcin Romanowski, or at some moment Viktor Orban say, "Whoa, you are too much," I help
Viktor
only
Orban
one
openly said in a speech that he expects other political fugitives from Poland. So he made very open remarks that he's willing to take in more people, and I think we should take him seriously.
Maybe do you know what Marcin Romanowski doing basically in Budapest? He's invited by the Hungarian media. He given some statement, have some meetings.
He did give some interviews to the propaganda media of Viktor Orban. Of course, he did give some interviews to Polish media, but we don't know what he's doing here. He's not very present in Hungarian public life, and honestly, he's absolutely unknown in Hungary. And as far as I understand, even in Poland, quite few people knew about him before his trial. So he's not a high-profile person. He can just blend in to the crowd in Budapest. No one would recognize him. I don't know what he's doing, although we did not really make any efforts to uncover him, since, again, as I said, from a Hungarian perspective, he's not an important person. Also, as I mentioned, at the same time, we have Nikola Gruevski, the former prime minister of North Macedonia, also hiding in Budapest, having political asylum. I mean, that guy, he illegally wiretapped thousands, if not tens of thousands of people. He was convicted for corruption and abuse of office. He was a former prime minister, so he's a much more high-profile person than Romanowski. It's usually in the news when people see Gruevski somewhere, and also people in the media recognize him. But I would say Romanowski is quite unimportant.
If we talk about the Hungary, basically in the last weeks, the records breaks the documentary about the oligarchs, about the Orban's wealth. Can you say something more about this case? They have some influence also on the society. Maybe it brings to some snap elections. You mentioned about the Tisza party, about the Peter Magyar, like the most important opposition player in Hungary.
Yeah, these are very different things. So as you mentioned, there's a new investigative documentary that was created by my colleagues working for Direct 36, a Hungarian nonprofit investigative outlet. And this movie had an exceptional audience in Hungary. I think currently the viewer number on YouTube is nearing 3.5 million. in a country of 9.7 million. That's quite good. It had a big impact. It had a big splash. I don't know how much it contributed to the popularity or unpopularity of Orban, but certainly this is a movie that summarizes how Viktor Orban's family, especially his daughter and son-in-law, got rich, how they bought up all these fancy luxury hotels in Budapest, and how Viktor Orban's son-in-law became, I think, currently the 15th wealthiest businessman. The most wealthy businessman in Hungary is Viktor Orban's childhood friend. We expect also his son-in-law to enter the top 10 next year. But a lot of people did not hear about these investigative stories. So it's a great summary. And if someone wants to understand political corruption and how Viktor Orban is not just building an autocratic system, but also he's amassing a huge fortune that is officially owned by his family members, they should watch this movie. It's called The Dynasty. It's available on YouTube. And very soon, the Polish subtitles will also be available. A couple of weeks ago, we had a small exclusive screening already in Warsaw for a small audience with Polish subtitles. So I really recommend everyone to watch it.
I want to end our interview with a question that Viktor Orban think about Poland, maybe have some plan to influence on our conservative right scene, keep the good connection with the law and justice, or maybe he looking for some ally with the Confederation Party. As we know, Sławomir Mencen maybe will take...
It's a very interesting question, because the thing is that the de facto allies of Fidesz, of the Hungarian ruling party, have been Law and Justice. But last year, when the Patriots for Europe group in the European Parliament and on the European level was created, it's parts of Confederacja, parts of the Confederacja delegation in the European Parliament who are members of the Patriots for Europe group, not Law and Justice. Law and Justice is in the European Conservatives and Reformists, which is a more moderate group compared to the Patriots. Some people dub them as the Putinists for Europe. So because of that, because of Hungary's Russia ties and also some other members within the Patriots for Europe group, like Front National and others, these are quite toxic to Law and Justice because of their Russia policies. So officially they cannot ally, but de facto it's Law and Justice and Orban's party who are closely cooperating. But now that Confederacja is rising in the polls, and as I said, since they are already like semi-official allies of Fidesz through Patriots for Europe, I think there's a likeliness that there will be more extensive contacts between the two parties. And again, Viktor Orban, not a lot of people remember this, but he has a history of backstabbing his allies. So he started out as a liberal politician, and then he was a moderate right-wing politician, and it was actually Donald Tusk, and it was actually the Civic Coalition, the Civic Platform, that was Viktor Orban's ally for a long, long, long time. And then, of course, Orban dumped Tusk and PO for Law and Justice. It happened once, it can happen twice.
Thank you very much for this interview. Państwa i moim gościem był węgierski dziennikarz śledczy Szabolcs Panyi z kolektywu Visquer, serwisu Visquer, gdzie również publikuje swoje śledztwa dotyczące Europy Środkowo-Wschodniej, też Węgier i Polski. Szabolcs, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you. Dziękuję bardzo.